Are you a Steelers fan that's just tired of eating the same old stuff every single day? You know, donuts and coffee or bland cereal, oatmeal, toast, a bagel. We're introducing Wacko Flaccos. That's right, folks. Wacko Flaccos, the best cereal that you can eat if you are a Steelers fan, post a buy, especially for the Bengals. Now, see, with this cereal, it is different from every other cereal that you've ever had before because this cereal is shaped in L's. That's right, not lowercase L's, not cursive L's, but big old large L's. That's right, folks. You take about 3 bites of this cereal and you are already full of L's, like how every Steelers fan is right now post this Bengals game. But you can only get it at your local Pittsburgh grocery store. That's right, folks. So go on down to your local Pittsburgh grocery store and get you as many boxes of Wacko Flaccos as you possibly can. Now, once you buy these Wacko Flaccos, make sure you go to the next Bengals game and have Joe Flacco, that's right, Mr. Wacko Flacco himself, sign off on these boxes. And when you do so, make sure that you keep them so you will remember the ass beating that him, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins gave. Now, with that being said, we have other things that we have to talk about. Brandon Graham returns to the Eagles. Brian Callahan gets fired. Commanders and Cowboys recap. Dolphins and Browns recap. Giants and Broncos recap. And Texans and Seahawks recap. All right. All of this and more on the 95th episode of the Football Junkies podcast, okay? I am your host with the most, all right? I am your hopium dealer. That's right. I am your GM who currently is not on a team right now, but don't you worry about it, all right? Don't you worry about it because I am all these things and more. But most importantly, the most important thing that you must remember is I am your host, Kale. Buckle up because it's going to be a long episode. It's going to be a great episode. It's going to be an episode full of twists, turns, truth bombs, and more. So guess what? On 3, 1, 2, 3, let's lock in. All right, folks, let's get into the meat and potatoes of everything that is going on in the league right now. So, I was going to start with the Steelers and Bengals first, but I want to save that for last because I have a lot to say with that, okay? So, let's just get into the Texans and Seahawks, all right? So, CJ Stroud, 49 attempts for 23 completions, 229 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 4.7 yards per attempt, and a 46.9 completion percentage. CJ Stroud again, 2 attempts for 25 rushing yards, 12.5 rushing yards per carry, and 2 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Dalton Schultz, 10 targets for 9 receptions, 98 receiving yards, and 10.9 receiving yards per reception. Sam Darnold, 31 attempts for 17 completions, 213 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 6.9 yards per attempt, and a 54.8 completion percentage. Kenneth Walker, 17 attempts for 66 rushing yards, 3.9 rushing yards per carry, and 2 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. JSN, 14 targets for 8 receptions, 123 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 15.4 receiving yards per reception. So here's a few junkie nuggets, okay? When the line out wide, JSN caught 8 of his 14 targets for 123 yards and 1 touchdown. Sam Darnold targeted in breaking routes 11 times, completing 7 passes for 97 yards and 1 touchdown. Sam Darnold ranks 3rd in passing yards at 1,541 passing yards, despite the Seahawks passing on 50.3% of their plays, the lowest pass rate in the NFL. So a couple takeaways from this game. For starters, the Texans need to protect CJ Stroud. I understand that you're going up against a really good defense that has a really good defensive line, but just drafting one offensive lineman is not going to do the job. Because right now, CJ Stroud has significantly regressed. When we look at his rookie year and compare that to how he's playing now, it's really bad. And a lot of that you have to blame on what's around him. He has a bad offensive line. His run game is not dependable. I mean, everyone was thinking, okay, you're going to have Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb. Joe Mixon still hasn't played, but you have all these receivers. So what sense does it make? And I will continue to say this, and I'm going to say this with the Dolphins and Browns game. You can have all the weapons in the world, but if you don't have an offensive line that's going to be able to protect you, you can't feed your weapons. And that's exactly what happened this game. If it wasn't for the Texans having Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, best believe this would have been a shutout. Because that Texans offense couldn't do anything. The run game was inconsistent. The passing game was inconsistent. They had no consistency throughout the entire game. The Seahawks was locking it down. But let's continue. The Seahawks are the best team in the NFC West. I am willing to die on this hill and say that there is nobody else in that division that you have to worry about. The Rams still look a little bit shaky. The 49ers, as I've said before the season even started, I don't believe them. I believe that they are pretenders. And the Cardinals are most likely going to just tank for the rest of the year. Because Kyler Murray is just not the same guy. So as of right now, the Seahawks are in pole position to win that division and can really be true contenders against the Lions, Buccaneers, or Eagles. You could probably even sprinkle in the Cowboys in there as well, but we'll talk about them when we get there, okay? But as of right now, the Seahawks really don't have a lot of flaws on neither side of the ball. The run game is consistent. The passing game looks really good. Sam Darnold looks really good. The defense is sort of giving you like a Legion of Boom 2.0 type of vibe. The DBs are really physical. The defensive line is getting after them. Now, the question is this. Are they going to be buyers or sellers when the trade deadline hits? Put a bookmark on that. We may talk about that in the next episode. Just saying. Sam Darnold for MVP? Question mark? Yes, I know we all drunk from the same cup last year, and we were thinking, Sam Darnold's going to win MVP, and then he just, I don't know, went down the wrong slide or something. It was just atrocious towards the end of last season. But this year, we may have to have a conversation. Because as of right now, there are only 4 quarterbacks in my mind that I would consider MVP candidates. Baker Mayfield is number 1. Dak Prescott, number 2. Sam Darnold, number 3. And maybe Justin Herbert, depending on how the rest of the season goes. I don't know, but just saying. But let's keep this thing going with a truth bomb. Self-inflicted wounds will be the downfall of the Texans. When they drafted C.J. Stroud, I was thinking, okay, they've turned the page from Deshaun Watson. They're going in a different direction. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And since C.J. Stroud's rookie season, it has been a sharp decline in his play. And offensively, it's regressed. And so I understand that you traded Laramie Tunsil. I understand that you've made a lot of movement on the offensive line and on the offense as a whole. But there is no cohesiveness on this offense right now. I'm sorry. I understand that you've lost Joe Mixon for, I would say, maybe the rest of the year. But you have to make a trade for a running back. You have to inject some energy into this offense because right now, they just got their ass kicked by the Seahawks. And it's only going to get worse from here because right now, the Colts is the number 1 team that every AFC team is going to have to face. And that's your division rival. So whoever their GM is, they need to be on the phone trying to make some trades now because things are not looking good within your division. The Jaguars actually look pretty good this year. The Titans, that's just a lost cause, we already know. But the Colts is the team that you're going to have to worry about. But let's talk about the Giants and Broncos game. So Jackson Dart, 33 attempts for 15 completions, 283 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, and a 45.5 completion percentage. Cam Scatterbo, 16 attempts for 60 rushing yards, 3.8 rushing yards per carry, and 1 rush of 10 plus yards or more. Wan'Dale Robinson, 12 targets for 6 receptions, 95 receiving yards, and 15.8 receiving yards per reception. Bo Nix, 50 attempts for 23 completions, 279 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 5.6 yards per attempt, and a 54 completion percentage. K. Dobbins, 14 attempts for 81 rushing yards, 5.8 rushing yards per carry, and 1 rush of 10 plus yards or more. Cortland Sutton, 10 targets for 6 receptions, 87 receiving yards, and 14.5 receiving yards per reception. So here's a few junkie nuggets. Against the Broncos blitz, Jackson Dart completed 8 of his 14 passes for 193 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. The 3rd most passing yards by any player facing the blitz. On 37 coverage snaps, PS2 didn't allow a reception. PS2 was targeted twice and only recorded 1 pass deflection. With that being said, let's talk about the Broncos offense. So for starters, they couldn't get a scoring drive together to save their life. Every time that they had a little momentum going, guess what? The Giants just knocked it down. That pass rush was doing its thing. And mind you, this offense is supposed to be one of the better offenses in the entire league. So for Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, the same old, same do their thing. Man, oh man, is that great to see. Now, I will say this. Andrew Phillips was physical. I mean, old school 2000s quarterback physical. He was making tackles. He was doing it all, man. I mean, this Giants defense looks really good, really productive, really consistent, honestly, on all three levels, which is actually really good because they are the bright spot of this team. But we have to talk about Jackson Dart effectively distributing the ball to everybody on that offense. Wan'Dale Robinson was getting his. Theo Johnson was getting his. The other tight end was getting his. Everybody was getting some attention, and that's how you win games. Now, I mean, we all know how they lost, and that's a little bit controversial by some people's standards, but we're not going to talk about that, okay? We're just going to leave that alone. But this is very promising. Even though they lost, for Jackson Dart to own against a really good defense like the Broncos says a lot. Now, am I saying that, hey, this team could possibly make it to the playoffs? No. But I will say this. Anytime you have a quarterback, a rookie quarterback on top of that, to be this effective without their supposed number one weapon, that's promising right there. But with that being said, if you're Joe Shane, should you make a move to bring in another receiver? Now, I understand that Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, and everybody else is being really productive, but you still need somebody to play that number one wide receiver role. So do you bring in a Chris Olave? Do you bring in a Jacoby Myers? Do you bring in an Alan Lazard if he is available? Do you bring in another receiver to help out? Because I think what they have right now is sustainable. Now, am I saying it's sustainable enough for them to possibly make it in the playoffs? No. But I think it's enough to maybe win 7, maybe 8 games. And I think if you do that, John Mara has to keep Brian Dable and Joe Shane. You can't get rid of them now. If Russell Wilson was still in the game, by all means, everybody's gone. But with Jackson Dart playing the way that he's been playing, you got to keep him. There is something there that can be built off of this season. But with that being said, the Broncos defense, I'm not saying it's the best, but it's up there. I would venture to say it's probably top 3 right now. Because if it wasn't for them having that defense, the Giants would have easily steamrolled the Broncos because the Broncos offense couldn't do anything. And the defense was the only thing that was keeping them in the game. But let's talk about the game that not a lot of people watched. I can assure you there was a lot of people that was probably taking a nap, maybe getting some brunch or making dinner, just doing different things just to pass the time because who in the world is watching the Dolphins and the Browns? Nobody. But let's talk about it. Tua, 23 attempts for 12 completions, 100 passing yards, 3 picks, 4.3 yards per attempt, and a 52.5 completion percentage. Quinn Ewers, 8 attempts for 5 completions, 53 passing yards, 6.6 yards per attempt, and a 62.5 completion percentage. Devon Achane, 13 attempts for 82 rushing yards, 6.3 rushing yards per carry, and 2 rushes of 10-plus yards or more. D. Eskridge, 2 targets for 2 receptions, 45 receiving yards, and 22.5 receiving yards per reception. Dylan Gabriel, 18 attempts for 13 completions, 116 passing yards, 6.4 yards per attempt, and a 72.2 completion percentage. Quinshon Junkins, 25 attempts for 84 rushing yards, 3.4 rushing yards per carry, 3 touchdowns, and 2 rushes of 10-plus yards or more. Harold Fannin Jr., 5 targets for 4 receptions, 36 receiving yards, and 9 receiving yards per reception. So with this game, honestly, yes, it was a bad game on both sides. It was rainy and everything, but there is something to come out of this. There's no need to fire Mike McDaniel. I understand that's not the popular option. I understand it's not the popular thing that Dolphins fans want to hear, but that's the truth. There's no need in firing him if Anthony Weaver, who by all intents and purposes will be the interim head coach, is not doing a good job either. So all you're doing is replacing crap with more crap. It's like that meme of the grandfather. He got the same shirt that he's wearing for Christmas. That's exactly what it is in this situation. So you might as well want to suck it up and just deal with it. Because guess what? This is what happens when you try to take an easy pass in roster building. We're going to go to class right now. Here's the thing, okay? And I had to really think about this when I was watching the game. Who can you blame for the Dolphins not being where they're supposed to be? Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer, Stephen Ross, Anthony Weaver, Tua. Who do you blame in this? And the number one person that needs to be blamed for this is Chris Greer. And here's why. And this is something that I've said in multiple episodes. Whenever you are drafting a quarterback, you must make sure that you invest into a good offensive line. Because if you don't, you're going to put your quarterback in harm's way. We have seen it multiple times where teams neglect offensive line, and by the time that they actually start to do it, it's already too late. The damage is already done. Now, I'm not saying that, once the Dolphins drafted Tua, the next few years they need to be drafting an offensive lineman in the first round. No, but you have to make investments on that line. Otherwise, guess what? Your quarterback is going to be a sitting duck. And that's exactly what's happened since Tua has been with the Dolphins. You cannot just make a trade for Tyreek Hill, draft Jalen Waddle, make a trade for Bradley Chubb, make a trade for Jalen Ramsey and think, oh, okay, we're this really good team. We can do whatever we want. No, it doesn't work like that. There is a process. And that process starts with good scouting, drafting, and being frugalent when it comes to free agency moves. Not just throwing everything away within the first 2 or 3 years and thinking, oh, okay, we can compete with the Chiefs. We can compete with the Ravens or the Bills or any other Super Bowl team. No, you can't. Because guess what? When you guys went to Kansas City, you learned right then and there that guess what? You still can't hang with the big dogs. I don't care if you have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, this person, that person. You still can't do it because why? Not everything else is built around Tua. And granted, there are some quarterbacks that can overcome their situation, but it's very rare. Tua is not one of those people. Tua is somebody that needs everything around him in order for him to be successful. So I don't understand why the Dolphins try to take the fast way to try to build this roster when you didn't. Okay, you paid for Teron Armstead, but how long did that last? Okay, you paid for Tyreek Hill, and then you had to repay him again, which was unnecessary. And then you did the same thing for Jalen Ramsey, which was unnecessary. So you see the trying to get at here, folks. This is a clear-cut example of what happens when you do not build a team the right way. You can't just keep on writing check after check after check after check, thinking that guess what, it's going to build a team. No, you have to start hitting on your draft picks. You look at any dynasty, the Chiefs, Patriots, even the dynasties of old. What is the one thing that they all have in common? A majority of the people that are on that roster, they drafted and developed them successfully. So when you don't hit on your draft picks, guess what happens? It pushes the process back even farther. We see that with the Steelers right now. The Steelers' success in the early 2000s was because of what? Good drafting and development. It wasn't because they got lucky in free agency. No, they were hitting on their draft picks year after year after year after year. And sooner or later, guess what? It made the process easier. And all they had to do was just get this person in free agency, get that person in free agency, just to put the bow on the gift. And that's it. But with the trade deadline coming up, I think the number one question that needs to be asked in the front office is, who are the building blocks for this team? Is it Jalen Waddle? Is it Devon Achane? Is it Kenneth Grant? Is it Jonah Savanaya? Is it your tight ends? Who on this team can you say is a building block? Somebody that you're not going to trade away no matter who offers you what. Because right now you are going to have to scrap this thing to the nuts and bolts. But you're going to have to keep some players. So who's it going to be? But let's talk about the Browns. So for starters, defensively, this was a really good bounce back performance. Because prior to this game, I had a lot of questions about this Browns team as a whole. But this defense, although I am confident that it's still going to be top 5, I wanted to see how they're going to respond after losing to the Steelers the way that they did. I wanted to see, hey, are they still going to be effective in the run game? Are they going to be better in the passing game? How are they going to approach the Dolphins? Because everybody knows that the Dolphins' offensive line is not good, and they know that they could get after Tua. And that's exactly what they did. But when we look at the offense, however, there is promise with Quinshon Junkins and Dylan Gabriel. However, you must reduce their expectations. They're going to have highs, lows, head scratching moments, and just WTF moments. But that's what happens when you're a rookie in the National Football League, okay? The one critique I do have for Kevin Stefanski is let Shedeur Sanders play. And the reason why I say that is because at this point, with you trading away Joe Flacco, you need to do a fair assessment on both quarterbacks. You need to see their limitations, their pros and cons, as well as what situation would be best for them if you were to move forward with them. That's the only way you can really know what you have in these two. The preseason is nice, yes, but you need to see how they react in real competition in real time. That's the only way you can know, hey, he's good when he's facing cover 2, cover 3, cover 4. Hey, this person isn't good when he's facing the blitz. Hey, this person is good with, little to no offensive line, etc., etc., etc. Only then can you come to a real conclusion of, hey, next year we're going after a quarterback, or hey, next year we need to go after a wide receiver or offensive lineman, or just a whole different direction. Remember, the Browns have 2 first-round picks next year. They have the Jaguars and their own. So you really need to make a real decision on what you're going to do moving forward. Because right now, listen, I understand that Shedeur Sanders is, the name carries a lot of weight, both negatively and positively. But at the same time, it is your job as the head coach to assess with what you have on your team. Because the Browns aren't going to fire you. We all know that. But you need to see what you have in both Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. One of them needs to play one whole game, and the other one needs to play the next game, regardless of who the opponent is. We all know that the defense is going to be great this year, but the offense isn't. Because why? The offensive line is beat up and depleted. The weapons, they're there, but they're not really there. So you just need to see what you have. And everybody, honestly, I would expand it for every single position. Offensive line, wide receiver, tight end, running back, you name it. Because again, the Browns would be in a much better situation if they just address quarterback. If they find stability at quarterback, this is a playoff team. Remember, a Joe Flacco-led Browns team made a deep playoff run. So imagine if they get their guy. Imagine if they have Baker Mayfield on this team. That's a Super Bowl team guaranteed. So you have to do these things now. There's no need for you to just have Shedeur just on the bench holding a clipboard. No, put him out on the field. Let him call some real plays. Not that bull crap that you guys say are real plays in training camp and in the preseason, because it's not. It's the generic stuff. Have him play call, have him execute, have him do the things that he needs to do on a Sunday. He needs to experience this. Otherwise, it's just wasted talent. That's like you going to the grocery store and you buying groceries and you're just going to let them sit and just rot. Then what's the point of going to the grocery store? Now, for the Dolphins, however, I probably would do the same thing. Because most likely, there's going to be a new regime. There's going to be, a lot of changes and a lot of people that are going to be moved. So you need to see exactly what do you have so far. What other positions do you need to address? Because right now, whoever is the next head coach and GM, you have a lot of work you have to do. But let's talk about the Commanders and Cowboys. Yes, yes, yes. How about them Cowboys? How about them Cowboys? You gotta say it sometimes, folks. You just have to, all right? So Jaden Daniels, 22 attempts for 12 completions, 156 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 7.1 yards per attempt, and a 54.5 completion percentage. Marcus Mariota, 10 attempts for 4 completions, 63 passing yards, 1 pick, 6.3 yards per attempt, a 40% completion percentage. Jaden Daniels again, 8 attempts for 35 rushing yards, 4.4 rushing yards per carry, 1 touchdown, and 1 rush of 10 plus yards or more. Jalen Lane, 6 targets for 3 receptions, 60 receiving yards, and 20 receiving yards per reception. Dak Prescott, 30 attempts for 21 completions, 264 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 8.8 yards per attempt, and a 70%. Javonte Williams, 19 attempts for 116 rushing yards, 6.1 rushing yards per carry, 1 touchdown, and 2 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. CeeDee Lamb, 8 targets for 5 receptions, 110 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 22 receiving yards per reception. So here's a few junkie nuggets. In play action, Dak was 9 of 11 for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. When Dak threw under 2.5 seconds, he was 10 of 11 passes for 71 yards, but all 3 touchdowns came from throws that took more than 2.5 seconds to release. Javonte Williams gained 75 yards and 2 explosive 8 carries running to the left, 9.4 yards per carry, while gaining 41 yards and 1 touchdown when carrying to the right, 3.7 yards per carry. So a couple takeaways from this game. For starters, the Commanders need Terry McLaurin. I have never seen, well, actually, you know what? I lied because, we've seen a lot of bad Commanders football, but we're not going to talk about that. But all jokes aside, the Commanders do need Terry McLaurin. The receivers were just struggling. And this isn't a really good Cowboys defense, but, you had Robbie Chosen, you had Jalen Lane, you had Luke McCaffrey, and they were just struggling. Nobody could really create separation. Nobody could really get to the ball. It was just bad, honestly. But if I'm not mistaken, I think Terry McLaurin will be playing on Monday night. Don't take my word for it. I think I saw it somewhere on Twitter. I don't know. Don't worry about that. But moving forward, the Commanders' cornerbacks struggled against Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, specifically Marshawn Lattimore. I have never seen Marshawn Lattimore struggle that bad. He was struggling hard against George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. And it was a barbecue chicken alert every single time he was matched up against one of those corners. And mind you, he's the most veteran corner out of everybody in that room. But we're going to put a bookmark on that, all right? Because there's a lot that needs to be talked about that. The Cowboys need interior defensive line help. Granted, you traded for Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark is only one person, okay? You need to bolster up that defensive line. But the problem is you can't do it when people are not available. Because it sounds like to me like Max nor Jeffrey Simmons is available. So it's like, who do you get an interior defensive lineman from? Because the compensation isn't a problem. They have 2 first-round picks. It's just a matter of, can they do business with another team? That's the question, right? Or do you take a cheaper route and try to get someone that's not as well known but is productive? I think that's just the best way to put it. But, we'll talk about that as the days go by and as we get closer to the trade deadline. But the Cowboys' best move this offseason was signing Javonte Williams. Super productive, quick, hitting his gaps, and is just really, really, really good. But moving forward, the Commanders need another receiving tight end option. I'll be honest here. I feel like the Commanders should have drafted Tyler Warren. And the only reason why I say that is because the best friend for any rookie quarterback or any young quarterback is a tight end. Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, even Ben Roethlisberger. They've all had productive tight ends at some point in their career. And it worked. So I would have at least dabbled with the idea of maybe getting one in the first round or maybe even in the second round personally, because Zach Ertz is showing his age. He really can't create separation. He really can't get to the ball like how he used to. And some of that is out of his control. I'll be honest. But I think in this situation where you don't have your 2 primary receivers, having that tight end would have at least added a little bit of stability to the offense. Instead of you relying on Robbie Chosen and Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane and other receivers. And this is no disrespect to them at all, but I just feel like a lot of the problems that the Commanders are having is because of poor roster building. And that goes directly towards Adam Peters. Because when we really look at this, right, trading Marshawn Lattimore, it started to look like it was a bad move. Okay, I'll be honest here. Granted, you didn't have to give up a lot to get him, but it looks like it's starting to look like a bad move because you're not seeing any production. You're not seeing the same Marshawn Lattimore that the Saints had. Instead, you're seeing somebody that really can't go toe-to-toe with number one, number two receivers. I'm sorry, that's a problem. Because outside of him, who else can you rely on? You have Mike Sandstrom. You have Jonathan Jones. Can't rely on him. Who else can you rely on? He's supposed to be the most reliable cornerback in that room, and he isn't. So what do? Do you have to make a trade for Tyreek Woolen? Do you have to make a trade for somebody else that may be available? Because right now, that secondary is a weak spot. And I think another thing that the Commanders also have to address is pass rusher and running back. Because I feel like with them losing Austin Eckler and then trading away Brian Robinson, they need an elusive back. They need somebody that can just cut one time, go. And I feel like, going after someone like a Breece Hall or David Archan or, somebody that has some speed to him, I think that would actually provide a lot of help for the Commanders. Because I feel like with Jaden Daniels being hurt, right? Coming into this game, I feel like the plan should have been, you know what? We are not going to put Jaden Daniels in harm's way. We are going to try to take the ball out of his hand as much as possible. And I would say, you know what? Hey, we about to run this thing 20, 25, maybe 30 times. We're going to chuck up the ball a few times to some of these receivers and tight ends, but we're going to run this ball. We're going to run this rock hard. You know that the Cowboys' defensive line isn't that strong, especially in the interior. So I just don't understand why you guys haven't made any moves by now. Because you need to. Because trying to bring that same energy from last year into this year is not going to solve anything. Because guess what? Everybody knows how to counter what you're trying to do. Everybody now has tape on Jaden Daniels. Everybody now has tape on how you run your defense, how you run your offense. Switch things up. I understand that they still have a lot of things that they need to clean up and it's going to take some time. I get that. But again, you cannot fall into the same pitfalls as the previous regime. I'm sorry. We have to be honest here. The offensive line has to be better. I don't understand why, as a head coach or as anybody, why you would want Jaden Daniels to play this game. If it's me personally, I'm not letting Jaden Daniels play until after the bye because you are our future. And so I can't afford for you to get hurt like how you are now, where most likely it's going to take him after the bye to get healthy. So what exactly do you do at this point? Because I don't expect the Commanders to do a lot this year. I expect for them to probably be maybe the third or fourth best team in their division. Just being honest here. When you compare their roster to the Cowboys, Eagles, and the Giants, they got motion right now. And that defense is more productive than what Washington has. Let's just call a spade, folks. Let's just have an honest conversation. Now, when we look at the Cowboys, however, the Cowboys offensively look great. George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, greatness. And this is the recipe for success with Dak Prescott. You give him 2 productive wide receivers or more, and you give him a productive running back and a decent offensive line, he's going to make some magic. As I've said before in the early part of this episode, Dak, to me, is an MVP candidate. Now, am I just going to give him the award? No. But I would say right now, he is playing at an MVP level. And it's only up from here. Because mind you, again, as I've said before, the Cowboys defense can only do so much. So the Cowboys offense is going to have to do the heavy lifting. So right now, if you're the Cowboys, what are you going to do to make this team better? Are you going to make a trade to target the offense? Or are you going to make a trade to target the defense? And since we're talking about George Pickens, another thing we have to talk about is the Cowboys were right in trading George Pickens. And the Steelers are now regretting that move. Because now you have this super productive receiver who, granted, you probably would like for him to run, more routes. But hey, he's super productive. Anytime that ball is coming his way, he's getting it. Now, he did have a little bit of an outburst and, he did have a little bit of an attitude when playing Chicago and whatnot. But all is forgiven, right? The fact that you got George Pickens for the compensation that you got him for is a blessing in disguise. Because personally, right now, he's playing at a second round pick, possibly a late first round pick, if he was to be traded. Just being honest here. But if you're the Steelers, you have to have some level of regret right now because why? You could have had that same production or more out of George Pickens had you could have tried to make things work. And granted, I know there's going to be a lot of Steelers journalists and people that follow the team will be like, well, George Pickens was just such a problem in the locker room and on the field, and we just couldn't deal with him and whatnot. Y'all knew who George Pickens was when you drafted him. So I don't understand why you guys are reacting like this. You knew what you were getting with him. You knew the attitude problems. You knew that he wanted to get fed a lot. You knew all these things. So why would you continue to draft him? This isn't like AB. You guys have tried to do this over and over and over again, and every single time that you do it, it blows up in your face. You tried it with Chase Claypool. You tried it with George Pickens. You tried it with Deontay Johnson. All three of them are gone. And now look at you. You are now in a situation, once again, where you're trying to get another receiver. But you didn't have to do it had you just kept him. And mind you, George Pickens said that his favorite quarterback that he wanted to be thrown to was Aaron Rodgers. So I guarantee you he probably would have bought in. Aaron and DK alone probably would have pulled him to the side and said, hey dog, listen, we're going to run things this way. We're not going to have no problems. Because DK would have been the big dog. But again, this is the Steelers. But with that being said, the Cowboys right now are putting up a fight. And depending on what the Eagles do during the trade deadline, depending on what the Giants do, I could make a strong case that the Cowboys have a chance. I'm not saying it's a big chance, but they have a chance to disrupt somebody in this division high up. Whether that be the Eagles, whether it be the Giants, whoever. Because, mind you, this division, if I'm not mistaken, has not had a back-to-back divisional winner in a long time. Every single year, there's always another team winning the division. Hey, just saying. If the Cowboys do it, I think it's working. I think right now, Brian Schottenheimer was a good hire. We got to be honest here, folks. If we cannot be honest, if we cannot have honest conversations about the assessment of teams right now, then what's the point in having podcasts? What's the point in just having conversations about football? But let's talk about Brian Callahan getting fired. So if you guys do not know, he was let go last Monday. And with him being fired, his overall coaching record with the Titans was 4-19. In this season, it was 1-5 with Cam Ward, according to Ron Davenport of ESPN. Now, this is what Titans president of football operations Chad Brinker had to say on why Brian Callahan was fired. And I quote, "We just felt like this was the right time to make a change. We were looking for growth in this football team, and that's what this is about right now. We're not seeing enough growth from this football team," end quote. During halftime against the Colts, fans were chanting, and I quote, "Fire Callahan," during the game and booing the team. Shortly after, Callahan turned over play calling responsibilities to quarterback coach Bo Hardigree. After a 26-0 loss to the Texans, Cam Ward voiced his frustration, saying, and I quote, "If we keep it in the buck right now, we're ass," end quote. Now, with the Titans firing Brian Callahan, Mike McCoy is now the interim head coach. He was the head coach for the Chargers from 2013 to 2016 with a 27-37 overall record and a playoff appearance within his first season. Now, this is what Titans GM Mike Borgonzi had to say about Mike McCoy, and I quote, "What Mike brings right now is experience and leadership. He has been a head coach. He's a former quarterback who's had some years in the NFL as a player and has been around NFL quarterbacks like Phillip Rivers, Peyton Manning, and he was with Trevor Lawrence last year." Now, here's the thing. According to ESPN research, 6 of the last head coaches of number 1 overall quarterbacks were fired. Cam Ward this year, Caleb Williams last year, Trevor Lawrence in 2021, Bryce Young in 2023, Baker Mayfield, and Jared Goff. Here's the problem that I have with this, okay? You cannot make Brian Callahan the scapegoat for your mistakes. Because this all stems back to when Mike Vrabel and that GM was there. You can't trade away AJ Brown and then just let Derrick Henry walk and then not properly try to build this team the right way and then just say, you know what, we're just going to fire this GM and then we're going to fire him and then we're going to fire him and fire him. You know what? He's not showing enough. You know what? Fire him, fire him, fire him. You cannot continue to keep on firing people. You have to give them a chance. There's a reason why you got the number 1 overall pick, because you suck. But again, this goes back to what I've said a couple minutes ago with the Dolphins. When you don't draft well, when you don't develop well, when you don't go through the process of properly building a roster, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to see success. That's just what it boils down to. Okay, granted, you have Jeffrey Simmons. You traded for L'Jarius Sneed. Okay, you signed Calvin Ridley. That's not enough. Rand Carthorne was trying to build this team, but guess what? You fired him because you wasn't happy in the direction of the team. It's a process. It's a rebuild. You guys are trying to rebuild from the years when you guys were productive, when you had a great defense, and then on the offense you had AJ Brown, Corey Davis, Delaney Walker, Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, and that really good offensive line. So of course it's going to take some time. What do you expect? This is the problem that I have with dysfunctional organizations and dysfunctional ownership. You guys would rather penalize the head coach for flaws that are out of his control. Now, granted, can you be critical of Brian Callahan for the coaching staff? Most likely. But you cannot penalize him for the lack of success that you are seeing in the quarterback and in the team as a whole. You guys suck. Now, my thing is this. If you know that you suck, why don't you just trade away Jeffrey Simmons? You know that you can get a guaranteed first-round pick with trading away Jeffrey Simmons. Guaranteed. There are teams right now that would be willing to give you a first-round pick and more for Jeffrey Simmons. That way, guess what? You can completely reshuffle the deck and then really build this team in the way that you want to. Because so far, all you've done is invest a first-round pick into Cam Ward, another first-round pick in Peter Skoronski, another first-round pick in J.C. Latham, another first-round pick in who? T'Vondre Sweat, if I'm not mistaken? That's not enough. It takes time. Sure, losing is not good. Being in a stadium where there's not a lot of people there isn't good. But guess what? This is the nasty side of building a team. This is a side that not a lot of people want to talk about. But every team has to go through it. Every single team goes through a rebuild. Now, the severity of the rebuild depends on the team and the direction of the team. When you have stable ownership that isn't super involved with the roster building process, the rebuild can be a little bit faster, especially if you're hitting on your draft picks. But if you're missing out on your draft picks, especially your first, second, and third round picks, you're not going to be able to do anything. So what do you expect? Now, am I saying that Brian Callahan was this great coach and he was scheming up great ideas and whatnot? No. But I'm not going to say that he was just the sole reason of why this team is not where they're supposed to be. I mean, come on. What do you expect? Did you really expect this team to be an 8-9 team? Did you expect this team to be in the playoffs? Did you expect this team to win the playoffs? I didn't. Everybody else didn't. So what are we doing? But I'm going to get off my soapbox. I'm going to leave it alone. But just know, when Mike Bergonzi gets fired and everybody else gets fired, just know I was right. But let's talk about Brandon Graham, all right? So he has decided to unretire. But before we get there, we got to pay some bills. Pardon the interruption, but this is your GM, your Bag Road Dominus, here to talk about RSS.com, all right? So if you guys already don't know, I am a RSS.com affiliate, and so I just want to tell you for just a quick moment about why you should choose RSS.com. So me personally, on my journey of podcasting, I was looking at different platforms just to find the right place. And I looked here, I looked there, I looked everywhere, but I checked out RSS.com and it was the best decision I ever made. From low prices to interactive analytics to as well as helping you with your distribution. RSS.com does it all. Not to mention, they just started a Slack channel where you can network and interact with other podcasters and even get some insightful tips on how you can increase your podcast even more. Also, RSS.com just launched their paid ads program. So now you can get paid for posting your content. Not to mention, all you have to do is just have 10 downloads and you're qualified for it. Who would want to get paid for doing something that they're passionate about doing? So head on over to RSS.com. I will be attaching my RSS affiliate link within the description. When you click on that link, I will be able to receive some compensation for it. And with that compensation, I will be able to give you guys a better product. A lot of that money will go towards upgrading the microphones, computers, new subscriptions for more analytical information that we can use for future podcasts, all of that and more. Thank you for your support, and thank you RSS.com for making me an affiliate. Now back to the good stuff. And we're back, folks. So let's talk about Brandon Graham unretiring. So according to NBC Sports Philly, Dave Zingaro, during the beginning of the season, Howie Roseman reached out to Brandon Graham to solidify their edge rotation. Although Graham didn't want to retire, he decided to stay retired at that time, thus making the Eagles sign Zadarius Smith. But here's the thing. Graham found his passion while attending a joint practice against the Browns during training camp. So here is Brandon Graham explaining why he decided to unretire, and I quote, "I understood both sides of it. Year 15, there's no better way to go out. They was probably thinking the same thing. But then reality set in for both of us. Another opportunity came. That first one I was like, nah, I'm going to stick with it. And then I was like, who am I fooling? If it come again though, baby, we gonna get it." End quote. Now this is how Brandon Graham prepared himself to return to football, and I quote, "I put myself through some stuff already. I'm excited with where I am and I feel springy, bouncy. I feel like myself. I feel good. I can't wait to go out there and be like Lane Johnson. What's good? You thought I was finished? That's where I'm at, man. I just can't wait for that first initial jog out. I'm going to mess with Jordan Mailata first, and then I'm going to see Lane. Then I'm going to go out and get the ones on the inside. Everybody going to get it." End quote. So this is actually a really good move for the Eagles because let's be real here. Once Zadarius Smith unexpectedly retired, their edge was just devastated, okay? And it also doesn't help that all the edge options that they could have traded for have basically dried up. Trey Henderson looks like he's off the market. I know there was like a few other edges that, people were talking about, but it looks like there's no option. So you might as well want to go back to Brandon Graham. He knows the system. He knows the people. You might as well want to do it. But I think the most important reason why they did it is because of leadership. I think with so much turmoil going on publicly and privately with the Eagles, I think getting someone like a Brandon Graham who's going to add stability and eliminate all of that noise, I think that's going to help out tremendously. Not to mention, you signed him for pennies on the dollar, and you possibly have given yourself an opportunity to maybe go after another pass rusher. Now, the thing is, with you going after another pass rusher, it doesn't have to be an elite one. It could be someone that's a tier 2 or tier 3 pass rusher just to help out. Because remember, you're still waiting for Nolan Smith to get healthy. You're still waiting for Zach Bond to, get in his groove. So I think this move was great, and it's only up from here at this point. Now let's talk about the game that everybody has been talking about, everybody has been crying about and everything, and that is the Steelers and the Bengals. Okay, so Aaron Rodgers, 34 attempts for 23 completions, 249 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks, 7.3 yards per attempt, and a 67.6 completion percentage. Jaylen Warren, 16 attempts for 127 rushing yards, 7.9 rushing yards per carry, and 4 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Pat Freiermuth, 6 targets for 5 receptions, 111 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, and 22.2 receiving yards per reception. Joe Flacco, 47 attempts for 31 completions, 342 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 7.3 yards per attempt, and a 66 completion percentage. Chase Brown, 11 attempts for 108 rushing yards, 9.8 rushing yards per carry, and 3 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Jamar Chase, 23 targets for 16 receptions, 161 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 10.1 receiving yards per reception. So here's a few junkie nuggets. So Jaylen Warren had a 62.5 rushing success rate against the Bengals. Chase Brown rushed 11 times for 108 yards with 101 yards after contact. His 9.1 yards after contact per carry were the most by any player this season. Joe Flacco completed 28 of 37 passes for 336 yards and 3 touchdowns from a clean pocket, the most passing yards in a clean pocket for Flacco since Week 4 of 2018 versus the Steelers, which he threw for 338 yards within a clean pocket. Flacco was pressured a season-low 24.5% of his drops while averaging a time to throw of 2.4 seconds, the quickest this season. On quick throws under 2.5 seconds, Flacco was 21 of 31 for 202 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. When facing pressure, Flacco was 10 attempts for 3 completions for 6 yards. There's a reason why I say this for last, because there is so much I have to say about this, okay? For starters, I'm glad the Steelers lost this game. I'm glad they got their ass whooped because they needed it. They needed to be exposed. They needed to feel that sting of an L because they needed to understand that, listen, though you have great defensive players, you are not playing well, okay? Because here's the thing. Anytime you have a quarterback that has only been with the team for 10 days, put up the numbers that he just put up against your defense that your head coach says has the potential to be historic, that knocks you back down a few notches. That puts you back into reality. Because let's be real here. The run game wasn't a problem for the Steelers. It was the passing game. It was the one position that they tried to turn over this offseason thinking that, oh, okay, if we bring in these people, guess what? We are going to see more production. And you haven't. You traded for Jalen Ramsey. He had a bad game. You signed Darius Slay. He looks like a shell of himself. You go after Juan Thornhill. You're not using him a whole lot. You bring in Jabril Pepper, You're not using him. Why is Chuck Clark out-snapping Jabril Peppers? Chuck Clark is not that good. And if you don't believe me, ask the Ravens and ask the Jets. Or better yet, ask Kyle Hamilton. He'll tell you personally. So I don't understand why in the world do the Steelers continue to do the same things year after year after year. You know that you're going up against the best wide receiver tandem in the entire league. And I dare anybody to say any other name than Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Those two receivers alone are elite when it comes to creating separation at the line of scrimmage. They are elite when it comes to making contested catches. They are elite in every category that is needed to be an elite receiver. Jamar Chase was cooking with hot grease. And I'm not talking about just that mild, timid hot grease. No, I'm talking about you could just put a speck of flour in it and it's cooking. That's exactly what happened. And they needed to know that, listen, although you may have this name and that name on your defense, that don't mean a damn thing. Because let's be real here, folks. The one quarterback that Mike Tomlin fears, it's not Patrick Mahomes. It's not Lamar Jackson. It's not Josh Allen. It's Joe Flacco. Because Joe Flacco knows Mike Tomlin like the back of his hand. No matter how fast TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith or Nick Herbert try to get off, it still is not going to be enough time to get after Joe Flacco. I'm sorry. He's a seasoned veteran. He's seen it all. Joe Flacco knows how to go up against elite pass rushers. Any time that Andre Yoshivas, a wide receiver 3/4 in a lot of teams, can beat someone like Darius Slay, that's a problem. Anytime I see bad tackling from Patrick Queen and Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay and others on this defense, that's a problem. And so for all the Steelers fans that want to talk about, well, Mike Tomlin has to go, Terrell Austin has to go, we have to get rid of them, they're just so toxic to this team. Give me 3 reasons why. And I don't want you to say the same generic crap. I want articulate, detailed reasons on why you want both Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin fired. This is the same thing that I asked somebody on Twitter. Because they said the exact same thing. And I literally said, when Mike Tomlin leaves this team, you will be begging and pleading for someone like him to come back to this team. Now, I'm not saying that I'm a Mike Tomlin fan. No, I respect him for what he does. But I'm very critical of the things that he has done within the last 5 years. So let me give you my 3 reasons on why Mike Tomlin should go. For starters, you have a bad coaching staff. I don't know if people understand how important coaching is. Anytime you have players like Keanu Benton and Joey Porter Jr., who have not shown that next step in their progression, that goes back to coaching. Keanu Benton is not an interior defensive lineman. He is an end. But you continue to put him in an uncomfortable situation. It's like a child trying to put a triangle peg in a circle peg. It's not going to work. And Joey Porter Jr., his mechanics, everything about him is just bad. He is a liability than an asset. Anytime that you are just holding on people just so you can win that rep, that's a problem. And granted, you guys let go the other DB coach just so you can bring in Gerald Alexander. Gerald Alexander, what are you doing with Joey Porter Jr.? Because all I see is a whole bunch of holding. That's all I see. Hold, 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 hold. At this point, you might as well want to play Mariah Carey, Touch My Body, when Joey Porter Jr. is facing somebody. Because that's all he's going to do, touch. So explain to me why certain people on this team have not shown that next level of progression. Coaching. You have to give hard coaching to these players. Because guess what? Keanu Benton and Joey Porter Jr. are approaching contract years. And you know they're going to want big money. So what are you going to do? But you know what? This all goes back to one thing and one thing only. You could have easily addressed the quarterback room had you just simply drafted Christian Gonzalez. Or better yet, you could have drafted Nate Wiggins. Or better yet, you could have drafted Quinyon Mitchell. But you didn't want to do it. Now, going back to the coaching staff. You know that Pat Meyer is not a good offensive line coach. So then why in the world would you continue to keep him when you know that you invested 2 first-round picks in tackles in back-to-back years, and you still have not seen the progression that you have been looking for? That is something that you can be critical of Mike Tomlin because he has control of that. Another thing that we need to be critical with Mike Tomlin is his decision-making when it comes to free agent acquisitions. Mike, why do you continue to go after these old-ass corners? You get Patrick Peterson thinking that you're going to get the same production that the Vikings got out of him. Prior to Patrick Peterson signing with the Steelers, he was coming off a season where he had 5 picks. 5 picks. You didn't see that type of progression when Patrick Peterson joined the Steelers. It was so bad that the Steelers said, you know what? We're going to try you at safety just to see if it'll work. Just to see if there's a little bit of a spark, and it wasn't. Then you tried it with Dante Jackson. My back hurts. Then you tried it with Darius Slay. I can't do anything. Where's Big Play Slay? I don't see that. I don't see Big Play Slay. You know what I see? Someone getting slayed. Jalen Ramsey. You're supposed to be the big dog. You called out Jamar Chase on the Pivot podcast, and you got exposed. You got to get your lick back, big dog. Joey Porter Jr., I don't expect anything from you. Because I know that you can't go toe-to-toe with a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson and company. I know you can't do that. You're not on that level. But you have all the intangibles to be on that level. Even when we look at the success from when they had Brian Flores, you saw how potent that defense was by adding someone like a Brian Flores. So then why in the world didn't you do it? And you can't say that there wasn't people that wasn't available. Because guess what? You could have easily signed Antonio Pierce. You could have easily signed Gerard Mayo, but you didn't want to do it. It's the same thing that you could do with the offense. You had Pep Hamilton. You could have brought in Byron Leftwich, but you decided that you didn't want to do it. You could easily bring back Dick LeBeau to help you out with the defense just so you can make the defense a little bit more creative, but you're not willing to do that. Why? And you want to know what makes things worse? There is a good chance that Arthur Smith might leave and be the next head coach for the Titans. So then what are you going to do then? Because you know that next year you're going to have to get a quarterback. These are the type of legitimate arguments that you can make about Mike Tomlin. And the last thing that we need to talk about when it comes to some of his deficiencies, and that is his inability to just change up his scheme. Quarterbacks know what to do to counteract what you're trying to do. We no longer live in a time where, guess what? My guys are bigger, they're stronger, they're tougher, they're faster, they can do it all. And they're going to beat you. It doesn't work like that. You have to be 2, maybe 3, maybe 6 steps ahead of a lot of these offenses. Because guess what? You know what's going to happen? Patrick Mahomes is going to pick you apart. Josh Allen is going to pick you apart. Lamar Jackson is going to pick you apart. Those NFC teams, they're going to pick you apart. Anytime Julian Edelman, that's right, Julian Edelman, and other former players and people that still play right now all say the same thing. Oh, we already knew what they were doing. That's a problem. They're not supposed to know what you're already doing before the game even starts. What sense does that make? But again, that all goes back to Mike Tomlin. So again, when we look at this game, passing defense is the bigger problem than the run defense. And I understand that he said that in his press conference, and I understand that Terrell Austin said it in his press conference. Well, they're lying, okay? And the stats back it up. The Steelers rank 31st in pass defense. I'm going to say that again so you can hear what I just said. The Steelers rank 31st, 3-1 in pass defense. And they are allowing 258.8 passing yards per game, 6 passing yards per play, and have allowed 10 passing touchdowns so far. Now they are ranked 18th in run defense. And so far they've allowed 4 rushing touchdowns, 115.8 rushing yards per game, 4.4 rushing yards per play, and have allowed 20 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. You cannot say that this defense is historic when they are not doing historic things. When you are not doing historic things. The 2000 Ravens is the gold standard for historic defenses. They didn't just go into that season and say, oh, this is going to be the greatest defense of all time. This is going to be a defense that's going to be so great that nobody will be able to replicate this. They let their plays speak for themselves. So I don't understand why you tried to hype this thing up before the season even started. That was stupid. Because every single time that Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, Joey Porter Jr., Brandon Echols, whomever gets blown up, guess what? They're going to revert right back to what you said in the summer, Mike Tomlin. And even then, at this point, I think you may have to start using Brandon Echols on the outside more and may have to use Darius Slay in a more creative role. Because right now, he can't do it. He don't got the juice. So something has to change right now. Because you're going to face the Packers on Sunday. After that, you're going through a gauntlet. You're facing the Colts. You're facing the Chargers. You're facing the Lions. You're facing the Bengals, the Ravens. You're facing all of those teams. And they have quarterbacks that can play mistake-free football. And another thing we need to talk about is this turnover culture bullcrap is not working. I understand that Terrell Austin has this vision of, okay, if we just keep on making splash plays, everything's going to be okay. No, it does not work. You want to know the difference between a great defense and just a subpar defense? A great defense is consistent every single week, every single matchup, no matter who is on the field or off the field. A subpar defense hopes and prays and holds their fingers together and have a rabbit's foot in a 4-leaf clover just to get some luck to try to make a play. That doesn't work. You have too much talent on this team to hope that you make a big play. No, you just need to be consistent. The passing defense needs to be consistent. The running defense needs to be consistent. Everybody needs to be consistent. And I understand that consistency is hard. But you have to do it. That is how you can classify yourself as an elite defense, as a historic defense. You look at all those great defenses. They were all consistent. You look at all those great defenses for the Patriots. They were all consistent. Sure, they had their struggles. Sure, there were some players that, they just gave them the business. It happens. But when we look at the Bengals, though, for them to overcome the Steelers the way that they did is just great. Let's be honest here, folks. Coming into this game, everybody was saying the same thing. The Bengals are going to lose. The Steelers are going to wipe the floor with the Bengals. And the Bengals say, you know what? To hell with it. We playing with house money. We going to fight. We're going to fight to the end. And that's exactly what they did. Joe Flacco put on a master class of how to properly beat the Steelers. Now, am I saying that Joe Flacco is going to continue to play like this throughout the rest of the season? No. Is there a chance? Yes. But I think by them winning this game, that allowed them to say, you know what? We're not going to sell off our pieces. We're going to see how this season goes and then make a decision moving forward. Which I think, if Joe Flacco can buy Joe Burrow enough time, I would say maybe by Christmas, if they have a winning record, we might have to have a different conversation about this team. I'm just saying, this is the second time that Joe Flacco has done this. Remember, he did this with the Browns. And the Browns, if we're being real here, this is my personal opinion, I could be wrong. The Browns probably could have made it to the Super Bowl. That's how well Joe Flacco and that team was playing. Just being honest, I could be wrong, but these are just my personal opinions, okay? But I'm going to end this episode here. If you guys like what you are listening, please make sure you guys download the episodes, please. That is the only way that I can know what you guys like and don't like, so I can give you guys a better fix that you need, love, and want, okay? Now, we are available on anywhere and everywhere that we listen to podcasts, okay? Whether that be on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else that have podcasts, okay? Now, if you go on rss.com, Football Junkies Podcast, there will be other links to other podcasting platforms that we are available on, okay? Now, for my YouTube people, like, share, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on any of the games that I've talked about, on anything that I've actually talked about. Am I right about Brian Callahan? Am I right about the Steelers? Am I wrong about the Steelers? Let me know in the comments, okay? Now, when you go on our YouTube, Football Junkies Pod, all right? Football Junkies Pod, there is a link tree. When you click on that link tree, it'll take you to anywhere and everywhere that we have Football Junkies content, okay? Now, for my podcasting people as well, make sure you guys leave a 5-star review on our podcast. Please, I would deeply appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Now, for my TikTok people, Football Junkies Pod, all right? Football Junkies Pod. I still have a few more clips I have to post. I want to try to at least separate them just so I don't really just flood you guys' timeline with just a whole bunch of clips. I'd rather just spread it out a little bit, you know what I mean? So when you go on our TikTok, Football Junkies Pod, in our bio will direct you to our YouTube, okay? I know some people may get a little bit confused about it, but I make a post that say link in bio. If you click on that link in our bio, it'll take you directly to our YouTube. And when you go on our YouTube, most of the times, the new episode is already there, okay? Now, for my Instagram people, Football_Junkies Pod, all right? Football_Junkies Pod. Junkies Pod is not what? It is together, not spaced, okay? It is together, not spaced. Football_Junkies Pod, all right? Football_Junkies Pod. I thank you guys so much for blowing up the Instagram. I appreciate you guys so much for just being with me on this process. I know I took an unexpected hiatus, but I mean, for you guys to give the interaction that you guys have, it's just greatly appreciated. It makes my heart feel really good. Now, for my X/Twitter people, GM Kale, all right? GM Kale. When you follow me on X, just know we are going to have some debates about the Steelers. We are going to have some debates about certain teams. Just want to let you know about that, all right? Now, on Blue Sky, same thing. GM Kale, all right? GM Kale, Kaile, all right? As always, I hope I gave you guys the fix that you guys need. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Stay tuned. This episode should be coming out fairly soon. If not late Saturday night, then early Sunday morning, depending on how things go, all right? So, as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. This is your GM Kale signing out. Peace and love. Later, guys.